Sorry, you guys are going to have to bear with me. I'm legally obligated to eat every 10 minutes. Lasagna. I just wanted to know what that was in sign language. Oh, it's spelled out. I was hoping there was like a layers thing. Hi, I'm your friendly favorite neighborhood fat kid, Kris Kilduff. And I'm here not with any grandiose tales of death-defying courage or a blueprint on how to change the world. I am really no different than you. The only difference is I get paid to eat macaroni and cheese. Now, not just macaroni and cheese. I'm what they refer to as a professional food critic. Though I tend to shy away from that term because I feel like the modern-day depiction of a food critic is that creepy, tall, gaunt-looking dude from Ratatouille. I'm more of a food writer, which is also kind of a bit of a stretch because I'm usually just scribbling down words like julienne and gnocchi while I'm secretly trying to scrub the mustard stain out of my shirt with the complimentary water. But however you want to label it, what I have had the opportunity to do is travel across the US and abroad, eat outrageous meals, work alongside extremely talented chefs, and spend enough time in the trenches to realize that whether it's a simple slice of pizza or a fancy 8-course wine dinner, food connects us all. See, we have these large intertwining lives full of different goals and responsibilities. Like you had to take care of your sick grandpa when he was in the hospital last week. You kicked the game-winning goal in your soccer game last night. You spent 3 hours this morning trying to figure out today's Wordle. It was llama, by the way. But all of us here, even back in those cheap seats, we all have one thing in common. We've all eaten food today. Now, I know what you're saying. Food isn't a commonality. It's just kind of that thing that we do in the back of our heads to kind of fuel our body. But truthfully, it's kind of the glue that holds us all together. That despite our age, our sex, our race, in every culture, in every country across the world, only one thing stays true. And that's that people gather to eat food, have drinks, and tell their story. This part of my story starts about 10 to 12 years ago. I was traveling a whole bunch more for the first time. I was getting reached out to by friends and family, acquaintances, even strangers, and they were asking me about all the food and restaurants I was posting on my social media platform. It was then that I had an epiphany that there was these large groups of people who wanted to be maybe more involved in the food scene, but just didn't know how much was happening right in their own backyard. Around that same time, I was delving deeper into the local culinary scene here. I was reviewing restaurants and interviewing chefs. I was getting published in magazines and newspapers and national blogs like Eater.com. And then, although those platforms were great, I didn't feel like any of them really had that true day-to-day, behind-the-scenes information exchange that needs to happen between restaurants and consumers. So a couple months before the COVID shutdowns, me and my then girlfriend created a community called Food Finder. Any of you guys follow us? Yeah. I feel like there's a few. In the last 2 years, we've amassed over 50,000 active weekly users. And we created a self-publishing platform that gets just under 1 million unique views every single month. And though those numbers are staggering, they're truly just representative of a shift that's happening. It's a change in how consumers are choosing where to spend their money and eat their food. That pages like us are kind of part of an evolution that's taking place. See, we're taking the power out of the hands of the advertisers and putting them in the hands of our peers. What once used to take a huge media company to report on, I now can write up something simple and get 100 times more engagement sitting in my boxers eating nachos. Before we let that tantalizing imagery go too far, none of this is a knock on traditional media. I think they do a great job, everybody in the city. The problem is that in so many communities, especially ours, people want more. You guys want to know the fresh sheets that are happening in restaurants. You want to ask a question. You want to interact with the chef or get that inside behind the scenes footage of a picture of your food that might actually be truly representative when you eat in the restaurant. And more important than any of that, they want all this from an authority who they trust. Once upon a time, I felt like we trusted our television and our radios and the front page of the phone book a lot more. But then the advertisers started kind of taking advantage. They started naming their companies AAA Auto Supply, or would tell us that endless breadsticks made up for microwaved pasta. But I know, right? But with all that happening, we now finally are understanding, we believed that partly because we didn't have a platform to really tell us otherwise, but partly because human beings, we're creatures of habit. We still sit 7 cars deep in the drive-thru to get a Big Mac because our parents used to get us Happy Meals. It's actually kind of funny. Do you ever realize that the closer you get down to the equator, the spicier the food is? None of that's on accident. It's actually really amazing. What happened was, before we had electricity, the number one way you'd be able to preserve your food is to actually pack it full of spices. If you lived in those climates, that's just part of your everyday practice. Those are the foods you could prepare, and so those are the foods that you ate. That happened generation to generation until once electricity became a widespread commodity, it didn't matter. You already wanted your curry at 5 stars. The same exact thing happens now with your mom's tater tot casserole. You had it as a kid, and it might not win any James Beard Awards, but you enjoyed those flavors, and now it gets passed down generation to generation. The only difference being you can air fry your tater tots. Oh, sorry guys, is it pizza? Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, I told you, every 10 minutes, it's blessing and a curse. Thank you, sir. It's kind of funny though, it's things like pizza delivery that kind of keep us disconnected from our food. Before you could waddle down to your restaurant and pick up a hamburger, you had to be more connected to it because you'd have to raise the cow and butcher it and age your cheese, ferment your pickles. Before there was an Albertsons, you'd spend 80% of your life just sourcing the handful of things you need to feed your family 3 times a day. And then slowly things kind of changed, right? In the 50s, we got the microwave. In the 60s, we got instant potatoes. In the 70s, we got cup of noodles. And by the time the 80s came along, we got a pepperoni and sausage delivered to our door in 30 minutes or less. And now we've kind of come full circle. In the same way you and I can go shop at a Costco, these restaurants have these mass food distributors. And they're a one-stop shop and can get cheese from France or Wagyu beef from Japan. So with all this at our fingertips, why are we seeing the largest upticks of all time in getting locally sourced goods? Our chefs are going back to the farmers markets. They're adjusting their menu by season. They're bringing in beer from the brewery down the road and putting locally foraged mushrooms in their risotto. This is exceedingly more expensive and takes way more time to do. So the question is, why? I think the answer is right here in this room. I see it every single day on Food Finder. We live these lives so full of stress and anxiety and oppression and political divide that something like food heals. It's one of those few things that we have that interconnects us all. It forges our relationships. That even right here in this room, I'd say over half of you probably went out to dinner before you came to the show tonight. A handful more will be going out for drinks afterwards. Invite me. But the reason why, whether we really understand it or not, is that taking someone out to coffee is love. Ice cream on a hot day is peace. Sharing appetizers with your friends is art. And all this is proving the age-old idiom true. We truly just are what we eat. Thank you.